here to bring you another edition of Yoga with me. Today's sequence is going to focus on the psoas muscle. It's spelled P-S-O-A-S, and it's a deep-seated hip flexor muscle. I'm going to stand up for a moment, kind of show you where it runs from. It comes from about your lumbar, runs down, so it starts actually at the back of your spine and then comes over and runs down and meets on the inside of your thigh. It's a pretty fascinating muscle. It's the only muscle that connects your torso with your lower body. I mentioned it's a deep-seated hip flexor muscle, so it helps us to walk. We shorten it, tighten it when we sit, and I know we sit a lot and probably even more so. It also connects with the diaphragm, which is the breathing muscle. So when a yoga teacher tells you to breathe into your hip, you actually can, which is quite fascinating. So the breath can alter the psoas muscle and vice versa. So fight, flight, and freeze are definitely felt in the psoas muscle. It's a fascinating muscle. You should look it up. There's so much about it. I don't have time to tell you everything, but I keep learning more and more about this fascinating muscle. A reminder to honor your body today. As always, if something doesn't feel okay, don't do it. If you want to skip something, you're welcome to skip, you're welcome to modify, you're welcome to choose another pose of your choosing. Just make sure that you're really honoring yourself and keeping yourself safe. That's the number one thing for sure. Props today, 2 blocks if you have them. So I'm showing you if you have yoga props what we use, and if you don't have them what we use. So 2 blocks, a blanket, and a strap. And if you don't have those, beach towel, bath towel works. The belt from a robe can work as a strap or even a necktie. If you don't have either of these or a strap, we can work around that. If you don't have blocks, we can work around that, though I suggest having something for support. Most of the time I say to use books. I don't know how useful those are. I had a student mention to me yesterday that he was using books as blocks and he needed to move them. They wouldn't really scooch on the mat. So I'm glad that I got that feedback because I don't typically use books, I use blocks. So they might help. You might actually need to stack like 3 or 4. If you have a little stool or a short little ottoman, that will actually be much more helpful than books for what we're going to use them for today. If you're near a piece of furniture, a chair, a couch, something like that, a coffee table, even a bed, that can help with these poses as well. And I will teach them, of course. If you don't have any of those things accessible, I will teach without it. But to maximize the pose, it's best to have support that are going to go under your hands, but I understand that not everyone has everything, so we will just do the best that we can. So I'm going to back up. You're going to start in constructive rest, usually how I start my practice and my classes. So have a blanket under your head as a pillow, unless that doesn't feel okay for you. I'm going to back up, place my props. So props up at the top of your mat, props, blocks, and have your strap up kind of near the top of your mat as well. And then come back into constructive rest. So you'll lie down on your back. I like to have support under my head. Make sure that the support is basically at the base of your skull. So your neck is pretty free here. You keep the natural curve of your neck. Start with your feet hip distance apart and your arms wherever you're comfortable. So this is constructive rest. And I mentioned that we're going to focus on the psoas, which is that deep-seated hip flexor. So we want to kind of try to relax it. So it is a tight muscle. It does tighten up in fight, flight, and freeze. It helps us, to walk. It's affected by sitting. There's so much about it. It's an amazing, fascinating muscle. We want to allow it to relax a little bit. So you're going to step your feet slightly forward. And you're going to find the spot that's best for you. So you don't want to feel like you have to grip your toes to keep your legs up. So if your feet went too far forward, find the best spot for you. You may need to widen your feet a little. You may need to move them forward and back. So find that spot and then close your eyes or soften your gaze. And I'm going to sit up for a moment because I want to read something to you because I think it's really relevant and beautiful for our practice today. So sometimes I have readings, sometimes I don't. So start to focus on your breath, feeling your natural cycle of your breath in this moment. And you're not going to try to change it or alter it in any way. If you find you need to adjust your feet or any other part of your body, then you do so. Feel your next inhale as it rises with your belly, your mid-ribs, your chest, and feel your next exhale as everything starts to soften, starting with your chest, your mid-ribs, and your belly. That beautiful pattern of breath moving throughout your body. And then think about your psoas muscle and how you're breathing into that muscle. Even if you can't feel it, just imagine that you can. Breathing in. I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out. I know as the in-breaths grow deep, the out-breaths grow slow. Breathing in makes me calm. Breathing out makes me ease. With the in-breath, I smile. With the out-breath, I release. Breathing in, there is only the present moment. Breathing out, it is a wonderful moment. We'll stay here for a little bit, keeping with your natural cycle of breath. You start to notice it slowing down, getting deeper, perhaps longer. Just allowing it to be as it is in this moment. It helps you have your hands on your belly to feel that connection with your breath, your physical body, and then that helps to work to keep the mind calm, quiet, distraction-free. And we know that that's not the way the mind works. So every time a distraction comes in, a thought, a noise, you inhale it, thanking it for reminding you about being present. And as you exhale, you let that go. Again and again. Start to deepen your breath, taking a nice full deep inhale, and release that exhale. Make a little movement in your fingers and toes. You step your feet back or extend them out long and stretch. You could hug your knees in, you could rock, you could stay still. Just giving yourself a little bit of movement here. Get the body slowly moving so we get our practice together. And when you feel ready, you set your feet back down, hip distance apart, so typical constructive rest. Arms wherever is comfortable. I'm going to move into a pelvic tilt. So I want you to move to your breath. And I'm going to sit up in a moment because I know it's hard to see. This is a pretty subtle movement lying down. So the next time you exhale, you're going to think about spreading your low back onto your mat, hollowing out your belly. So you're tucking your pelvis under. And then when you inhale, you're going to arch your back and you're tilting your pelvis up. So exhale, coming into that upside down cat. Inhale, that upside down cow. So move to your breath, and it's just the pelvis that's tucking, that's tilting, that's moving forward, back, up, and down. So if you need to see seated, I'm coming into what the cat is. So I'm spreading my low back, hollowing out my belly, slightly rounding. And then when I inhale, I'm going to start to lift my tail up, moving up my spine, arching my back, slightly opening my heart. Let's do that a few more times. Notice if you start to move not to your breath. That's okay. That's just a way to realize you're not being present, you're distracted. And finishing up, last round. Once you're complete, come back to constructive rest. And you're going to hug one of your knees into your chest. You can have your hands on your shin or behind your knee, whatever's comfortable for you. And just hold your knee here for a breath or two. And then your other leg, that knee can stay bent and your foot can stay on your mat. Or you can start to move that leg forward. So you could do like we were in constructive rest where you just had your leg a little bit forward. You could take it all the way, check in. It's going to intensify things. If that leg's extended long, make sure that you're pressing through your heel or the ball of your foot. Heel preferably, but if that causes sciatica issues or anything else in your low back or anywhere else in your body, then press more through the ball of your foot. You want to keep your leg active. So think about really lengthening that psoas muscle. And then we're doing the opposite to the other psoas muscle of the knee that's being hugged in. And then imagine you can send your breath into the right side, into the left side. And then a leg that's extended out long in some variation, bring that back in, have both knees in your chest, and maybe rock a little side to side. And then a leg that was extended out long, keep that knee hugged in as you set the other foot down on the mat, starting here first. So just notice if you went to the full expression of the pose for your body today, and come back. You already know what's happening, so you're already anticipating that. You're in the future. And then from here, check in. This is a different side, so perhaps this leg stays bent or extends out long or some variation. Then check in with the ball or the heel. One side may feel very different than the other and have different needs. Then feel your breath on your left side. Feel your breath on your right side. The leg that's extended out long, hug that back in, both knees in your chest, rocking. If it would feel good, you can widen your knees. This is a new thing I've liked doing in some of the classes I've been taking. So I'm rocking side to side with my knees wide, and then I kind of roll over to one side. And I keep my knees as wide as I can, and then come back up and roll over to the other side. It's a nice way to start opening up those hips, a gentle way. If that's too much, then you bring your knees back in. You come back to constructive rest, whatever works for you. And slowing that down, coming back to constructive rest, make any adjustments you might need to. You're going to come into Supta Baddha Konasana, which is reclined cobbler's pose. So the soles of your feet will touch. They don't have to touch, but they're going to come toward each other. And your knees will go out to the sides. This pose is pretty intense for me, lying down. We won't be here very long, though if you choose to stay here, we're going to take a next step if you choose that. If you decide to stay here and this is really intense, you can put support like blocks or blankets rolled up under. I know you might not have that, so you might have to adjust and maybe bring your knees a little higher or even bring your feet back to your mat. So check in there. It might be way too much for me. It's more intense on my left side than my right side. You can stay here, come back to constructive rest, or interlace your fingers behind the base of your skull like you're going to do a crunch, because you are, and your elbows are out wide. So we're going to move with our breath, and these are clamshell crunches. So you're going to think about your elbows coming together and your knees coming together. When we crunch, we don't want to curl up. We want to lift. So you're going to imagine that you're lifting your heart up to the ceiling, up to the sky. You can just do the legs, you can just do the arms as well. So taking a nice deep inhale. On the exhale, crunch up, closing the knees, the elbows, lifting the heart, and then inhale back down. And exhale, crunching up, and inhale back down. Do 3 more, up to 3 more. If that's too much, then you do what's best for you. Go into your own breath. So moving to the breath ensures that you continue to breathe. We tend to hold. If you've got one more in you, do one more. And also make sure that we go slow, slow and steady. Slow build strength. And then bring your feet back to your mat and hug your knees back into your chest and maybe rock again. Then set your feet down. This time have your feet as wide as your mat. Again, we're going to move to our breath. So inhale, knees are standing nice and tall. On your exhale, you're going to move your knees over to one side, whichever side. And then inhale back up and exhale to the other side. So moving to your breath, windshield wiper twist. You decide how far your knees go. If it's too much, then just move them an inch or two over to one side. Maybe you have a piece of furniture or an animal in the way, so that might alter how far your knees go. Notice if you're just flopping your legs over, if you're not connecting with your breath. Do one more round. Once you're complete, come back to constructive rest, adjusting your hips, your shoulders, anything else. Just pausing for a moment before we transition, being in this moment right now. Roll over to one side. You decide which side it is and stay here for a breath or two. Don't immediately bring yourself up. You don't want to jar your head up. And then with the strength of your hands and arms, press them into the floor of the mat. Head comes up last as you come on up to seated. And we're going to make our way to standing. So move your blanket off of the mat and come up to standing. However the best way is for you to get there. If that's through a forward folded downward dog. I'm not showing those right now, so you'd only do those if you know them. I have moved off of my mat so that you can easily see me, but you stay on your yoga mat. I know you might have to adjust yourself for your computer or phone or whatever you're watching this on. So take the time to do that if you need to. Coming into Tadasana mountain pose. So we start with our feet, checking in that they feel grounded and rooted, that all four corners of our feet feel even in our mat and our surface. And you check in. So typically we stand here at hip distance apart. That's not okay for everybody, but that's where we start. That's our base, and then we make the change from there. So feeling around for those bony protrusions. If you could draw a line right down from them, down your leg, the line would go through the middle of your ankle, and that's hip distance apart. So a lot of times we think this is hip distance apart, but that's femur distance apart. So find that, and then you play with it. Is that the best place for you to be? Do you need to be closer, farther apart? So you find that. That press helps you to have the lift in your belly so that you're lifting and lengthening. So we want to think about our tailbone. Remember we were doing those cat-cows earlier, so the tucking and the tilting? We don't want to do any of that right now. We want to be as neutral as possible. I have a pretty good sway back, so it's a little bit harder to tell in my body. But you can think about your feet helping to lift your belly. So you're going to lift your belly up to your heart, nice and long. And then you're going to think about your tailbone and imagine you have a tail here. And you're going to drop that imaginary tail down to the mat. So you're lifting and lengthening and still breathing. Beautiful. Arms go wherever is comfortable. Check in with your head and neck. We tend to have our chins jutting forward. So can you float your head evenly over your neck, evenly over your shoulders? Tadasana mountain pose. And then I'm going to shift back to my mat because we're going to transition into a forward fold. If you have blocks, you can have your blocks near you. I will get mine just so that I can show the different variations. If you don't have blocks, don't worry. So forward fold, starting in your Tadasana, bring your hands to your hips. You're going to hinge at your hip creases. So you want to keep your spine really long so you're still having that lift from your belly to your heart. And then come into this half fold. So your spine is still really long. You might have to bend your knees a little or a lot. If you know there's no way your hands are going to get to the mat, especially without rounding, then you stay higher. You could keep your hands at your hips, hands at your thighs. A variation I like is bending your knees, forearms on your thighs, reaching through my fingertips. So I'm still really active here. My spine is super long. My neck is a continuation of my spine. Maybe you're close enough that you can reach your blocks or your stool or your ottoman or bed. If you could do without blocks, you don't want to be rounded, so you still want to maintain that length. You could bend your knees a little bit here. So find the best variation for you. whatever that looks like for your body right now. And then from this forward fold, you're going to come back into a downward facing dog. So if your blocks are in the way, move them out of the way. For some of you, it's going to be easy to walk hands forward and feet back. For some of you, that's not going to be accessible, so come to a tabletop and then step your hands forward. So tabletop, your wrists are below your shoulders. You'll step your hands forward, about one hand print, and then curl your toes under. You're going to lift your knees up off the mat. You're going to aim your sit bones toward the ceiling, moving your butt, hip, and thighs toward the back of the room or whatever's behind you. You want your ears between your upper arms, so you should be looking at your feet and not your knees. Spread your fingers wide. Your heels don't have to touch. You can have deeply bent knees. You want a long spine here, so your body's in a long inverted V. So if you feel really rounded, bend your knees and lift your hips higher. Keep your breath flowing. Bring your knees down to your mat. I'm going to transition here. You stay on the long way of your mat. If you have your blocks, you're going to use your blocks here. If you don't, I will teach these poses without using the blocks. But if you have something that's going to make these more accessible, possibly able to actually get into the pose more deeply. So step your right foot forward, coming into a low lunge. I'm going to back up even more so that you can see my foot. So I like to use my blocks on the highest height. If you don't have blocks, then have your hands on your thigh, or if there's something, a piece of furniture or something near you that's going to help. So a lot of times people insist on having their hands on the mat, but if you're really rounded, you're not getting a lot of benefit from this pose. We still want to be really long and open. Even though our focus is more in our hips and our legs, our feet, we want to allow our body to help support, the upper part of your body is supporting the lower part of your body. So I like to be high up on blocks. Your back knee, I prefer to be down on the mat. I forgot to mention if you need padding for your knees. My knees aren't super sensitive, but yours might be. And you check in that your knee is right above your heel. So make sure it's not forward of it. That's where we can start to hurt ourselves. Keeping your knees safe. Back toes can be curled under or the top of your foot on your mat. That came up in one of my classes this week. I personally prefer my toes curled under. I feel like I have a little more control, a little more balance, but you decide what's best for you. So here we are in our lunge, and we're going to transition to what's called lounging lizard. If you have blocks, bring your blocks onto the inside of your foot or your stool or whatever you might be using. If you don't have blocks, you're going to stay upright. We're all going to heel toe or foot out to the side. So we're getting into that psoas muscle, and so we're coming at an angle. So your knee is still right above your heel. Make sure that your toes aren't turned in too much, turned out too much. So see how my knee's going in a weird spot? Same with the heel. So you might have to kick in or out just slightly, pick up all your toes and then set them down. Lounging lizard. I am perfectly fine being here up higher. You may find that you can be on your forearms, on your blocks, on your mat, on your support. You could stay right here. So if you don't have any something to use as a block, you have your hands right here on your thigh. Whew. And again, that idea of breathing into your hip. So here, this is an intense pose. We hold it a little longer than we do other lunges. So you may find as you get deeper into this pose, you're like, oh yeah, I could come a little lower. It might be way too intense. As you get deeper, you may need to actually back out of the pose. So honor that, pay attention to that. This is intense. And then from our lounging lizard, we're gonna come into a dragon pose. So this is a twist. So I'll show it if you're upright. Even if you have blocks, you might choose to do the twist upright. So you're gonna think about your low belly, and it's gonna start to turn towards your front knee, and your hands will stay on your thigh. So you're turning from your low belly, your upper belly, your chest, and then your shoulders. If you're on blocks or support, keep your left hand on the block. Your right hand can come to your thigh, and then you'll start to open up. Same idea, low belly, upper belly, chest, and shoulders. Keep your breath flowing. Your next exhale, start to come out of the twist. If you have blocks, bring them on either side of your foot as you heel toe back to center. And then you're gonna come back into a tabletop. From your tabletop, you could stay right here. You could pick up a leg and give it a shake. The leg that you just worked, maybe the other one as well, cat-cow. You could come back into a downward facing dog and do some pedaling. Pick up that leg and give it a shake. I'll give you a breath or two here to continue with that. I need to drink some water. Don't forget to drink water. So I know people who do my yoga videos are all over. I have a lot of students in Tucson. I have a lot of students in Portland, and I hear that's pretty warm in Portland right now. So make sure that you drink water. A lot of people in Portland do not have air conditioning. So, okay, come back to a tabletop. I'm gonna come into that lunge on the other side, so stepping your left foot forward. I adjust my stance so that you can see my foot. So I'm checking in, my knee is right above my ankle. It can be behind it, just not forward of it. If you want to go deeper, then you crawl that foot forward. But remember, we're going to come into that lizard, so you may not want to go into your fullest extent of your lunge today, your low lunge. And then just feel your breath. This might already feel pretty intense. Our hips are pretty tight. And so we have a focus on our internal hip today, but there's a lot of work happening for the external hips and really the whole body. Even if I have a focus, your whole body gets a well-balanced practice. If you have blocks or support, bring them on the inside of your foot. If you don't, keep your hands on your thigh and heel toe off to the side. So check in here that your foot's not too turned in or too turned out. You're still in a lunge here, keeping your knee in alignment with your heel. And then decide where your hands are going to go. If they're going to be up higher. You could even just be on your hands, on your mat, even tented fingers. Your hands can be up on your thigh. Check in with your breath. Oh yeah, lounging lizard. I have to say, so I've been back in Tucson not quite 2 years. Last summer was my first summer back in a long time. And I have to say this summer, the lizards seem way bigger. And maybe it's because I have a dog now and he notices lizards. He's too slow. I have a greyhound, but he's still too slow. He can't catch them, which is a good thing. But man, there's some big lizards. So I don't know if something happened in the past year or I'm just noticing more lizards now. All right, we're going to come into our dragon pose, which some of them look like dragons. So coming into that twist, whether you keep your hands up on your thigh and from your low belly, start to come into that twist towards your front bent knee. You keep your right hand on a block or support as you have your left hand on your thigh and start to open up. Keep your breath flowing. The next time you exhale, come back into your lizard. Heel toe your foot back to center, and then come back into your tabletop. So again, if you want to come into a downward facing dog, you can. If you want to come into a child's pose, pick up a leg, give it a shake, whether from tabletop or downward facing dog. Pedaling your feet can feel nice. You can stay in a dog or a tabletop or a child's pose, or if you'd like to come into a plank pose, and you can come down to your knees, you can come down to your forearms. You come to your forearms, you make sure that your elbows are right under your shoulders. If you're on your hands, you make sure that your shoulders are right above your wrists. Whatever variation you're in, make sure there's no sway back happening. You're lifting your belly up toward your spine, spreading your shoulder blades on your back. Your neck is a continuation of your spine. Whew. And the most important thing is you're breathing. You're pressing your heels away, reaching the crown of your head the other direction. And then bring your knees down to your mat. and come down onto your belly. So first we're going to come into crocodile pose. So you stack your palms. You can rest your forehead, your chin, or your cheek here for a moment. This is a good alternative to child's pose. It'll also be beneficial if you choose not to do the belly back bends that we're going to do. They're not extreme or huge, but you still need to honor. All right, first one. Bring your arms down by your sides. Have your hands by your hips, your palms facing toward your midline. Have your chin or forehead on the mat. I don't, just so you can hear me. And then you're going to imagine pressing the tops of your feet into your mat. So don't curl your toes under. Press your toenails, the tops of your feet into your mat. And then lift your legs up off the mat. This may be all you do today. Then if you feel all right, you want to go to the next step. Lift your triceps up toward the ceiling like you're trying to press your palms toward each other. And then last, inhale, peeling your chest up off the mat. Again, make sure your chin's not jutting forward. See how my voice changes? Keep your neck long so your gaze is just a little bit in front of your mat. Next, exhale, come down. You can rest in your crocodile. You can wiggle out your hips. You could bend your knees and do windshield wipering here. And we're going to come into a half bow pose. This is where your strap can come in handy, if you have one. If you don't, we'll work around it. I'll show you all the variations. So I'm going to bring my right forearm onto my mat. So my forearm is parallel to the top edge of my mat, and my elbow is right under my shoulder. This might already be enough for you. If you need to have your arm more forward, you can, because this can be intense. This is pretty intense for me. And you want to press your pelvis into the mat. And then you're going to bend your opposite leg. So bend your left leg. And if you don't have a strap, you just reach towards your foot. Maybe you hold on to your foot, maybe you don't. If you have a strap, you can ever so elegantly make your arm longer. So I'm going to pull on my strap. I'm like pressing my hands toward my foot and my foot toward my hand. Working against each other, keeping your chest facing as much forward as you can. You may or may not lift your thigh up off the mat. And then release, come on down. Oh, wiggle, windshield wiper, whatever you need here. And then the second side, you may have more accessibility, less. Come onto the forearm of your left arm. Checking in if you need to have it more forward or more stacked so that your elbow is under your shoulder. Bend your right knee. Reach your right hand towards your right foot. Maybe it touches, maybe it doesn't, maybe you use your strap. If you have your hand on your foot, you can press your hand in your foot into your hand, or the same thing with your strap. Keep your chest forward. Keep your breath flowing. You need to come out early, come out early. Release your foot. Come back down, resting in your variation of crocodile. Wiggle out your hips, windshield wiper. You can stay here, or you can come into a child's pose. Whether you're in child's pose or crocodile, make your way to a tabletop. Just transitioning from our tabletop back up to standing. If you have support, you may want to get your support. I'm stepping off my mat again just so that you can see me. So I'm going to quickly show you what we're going to do, and then I'll walk you through it. So we're going to come into a warrior 2. I'll give you all the steps. From warrior 2, we're going to come into a warrior 3. So this is where you may want to use your blocks for support. Maybe you have a wall or a bed or something, a dresser to support you. So if you have blocks or some sort of support, make sure that they are on the right side. And then step your feet wide. Rotate your right foot and leg 90 degrees. Kick your back heel back about an inch. And then start to bend your front knee. Usually I mirror and I messed up, so I'm going the opposite probably of what you're looking at. I apologize because I do like to mirror, but that did not happen. So make sure that your knee is right over your heel. It can be behind it, not forward of it. So keep it safe. And it also might be kind of falling in. So externally rotate that thigh. Aim it toward your second and third toe. Bring your hands to your mid-ribs and turn those to the long edge of your mat, and then reach your arms up to shoulder height. So you want to reach through your shoulder blades out through your fingertips. This might not be okay, so maybe you need to be in cactus arms, hands at hips. My left arm in this position doesn't feel good, so I typically only stay there for a breath or two, and I come into what I call baby broken wing. That's an option as well. And then from here, bring your hands down at your hips. Step your back foot in a little bit, so we're more in warrior one legs. Chest and hips are facing toward the same direction as your front foot. And then you're going to start to come onto the ball of your back foot. That might be your balance today. Maybe you start to lift your toe up and put it down. Maybe you start to lift that leg up, start to straighten your front leg. Hips are square, so make sure they're square to the floor or the wall. Ooh, falling out. This is where you could use your blocks. Any support you have, hips square, chest facing in the same direction, reaching through that back leg. So it's really strong, really straight. Both legs are reaching. And then slowly come back down into warrior two legs for a moment. Straighten your front leg, parallel your feet, and set up warrior second side. Warrior two first, so step your feet wide. Rotate your left foot and leg 90 degrees. Kick your back heel back about an inch. Toes will come in slightly. Bend your front knee. Now lift all of your toes up. Spread them and then set them back down. Turn your upper belly and chest. Reach your arms. You can decide where your gaze goes. So I've got something kind of in the way here. I guess it'll work. You can look out your front middle finger. That's typical warrior two gaze. You can be looking out from your chest or even at your backhand. Sometimes we don't know what's going on back there. And then make sure you glance down at that knee. Make sure it's safe. And your shoulders are right above your hips. So notice if you're leaning forward or leaning back, be right in alignment. Bring your hands down at your hips. Step your back foot in. Turn your chest, your hips forward. Start to come on the ball of your foot. Come on down. Maybe lift. Maybe come more into a warrior three, keeping your hips and chest square in the same direction. Arms can be out, heart center. You could use your support. Reach through that back leg, really strong, really straight. Both legs, like reaching and lifting. Ooh. A breath or two longer. And then bring that back foot down, straighten your front leg, parallel your feet, and step your feet back together into Tadasana, your mountain pose. So just take a moment here. Wherever you were with your balance, it was amazing. I know balance can be really frustrating, and some days it's really great, and other days it's not. And sometimes it just seems like it's always not, and that's okay. The more you do it, the better you'll get, I promise. And you know, we have injuries, we have things going on in our bodies that are gonna make balance more difficult, so you just have to keep at it. Just keep doing it every day, even if you just stand on one foot and then the other, that can be your balance. I do that when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, 30 seconds on one side, 30 seconds on the other side. I've got the counter right there, I just lifted my foot, no big deal if it falls back down, and my balance got better. I sprained my ankle almost 2 years ago, and it's still not back to where it was before, but it's improving. All right, we're gonna come into a squat. I'm just gonna move my blocks out of the way. So if deep-seated squats are not awesome for your knees, you're gonna step your feet a little wider than hips distance apart, turn your toes out. Actually, we're all gonna do this. And then you'll just bend and sit back like you're gonna sit in a chair, almost like an umpire pose. And then you'll have your hands on your thighs. So it's a little bit like that forward fold we did earlier. So that's plenty. If you know that you can do deeper squats, you're gonna start to bring your butt down toward the mat. Knees go wide. Arms press into your knees, knees into your arms, hands at heart center. If you're up on your heels, because they won't come down, you can take your blanket and have it behind your heels so that you have something to press into. And then it allows you to sit longer and taller. I'm almost sitting on the blanket. You could sit on a block. You could have a block or something right in front of you to help hold you up. Because it is also balance, especially if your heels aren't down on the mat. And then from here, you're going to have your hands in front or back to come and have a seat. And we won't sit on our support quite yet. And I'm going to turn to the side so you can see me better. So don't sit on any support. Sit right on your mat with your knees bent and your feet on the mat. So it's like seated constructive rest. And you want to sit nice and tall here. Your hands can be on your shins or behind your knees. And let's come onto the big toe of one foot. You feel your core kick in. You still want to have length and your heart open. So you don't want your back to start to round. You need to sit nice and tall. And then set that down. And then come onto the big toe of the other foot and keep that lift and opening. And come back down. That might be enough for you today, and that's where you stay. Let's come back to that first foot and then the second one. Remember, step by step, lift one foot and then the other. So keep the lift in your belly. Keep your chest open. Make sure your back's not rounding. This might be where you stay, or bring your feet back down at any time. Perhaps your hands release, palms up. Whew. Still breathing. Maybe your legs go towards straight. Still breathing. If you're one of my regular students, you know the best kind of boat is a sparkle boat. Sparkle your fingers and toes. Yeah, and then bring those feet down and give yourself a hug. Whew. That's intense. And I'm going to shift again so you can see me a little better. Step your feet as wide as your mat. Have your hands behind you. And let's do some seated windshield wipering. Moving your knees to one side and the other. You could decide to do regular windshield wipering, or maybe one hip comes up. As you go the other direction, the other hip comes up. Do one more round. That kind of feels nice. It kind of massages. Ooh, all right. For this next pose, get your blanket or your towel. I'm just shifting back so you can see my legs. I'm sitting right at the edge of my blanket, and extend your legs out long, pressing through the heels or the ball of your foot. Hands to support you, so out to the side or even behind you. But we want to sit nice and tall and long. You're going to ground your right heel into the mat, and you're going to lift your left leg up an inch or two. And keep breathing. Set that one down, ground it as you lift your right leg up, keeping it long and reaching and breathing. Set that down, ground that heel, lift again the first side. Set it down, ground, lift that second side. Set it down. Let's do one more round. Ground and lift. And breathe. Ground, lift, keep breathing. Set it on down. Whew. Do a little wiggling. You do windshield wipers with your feet, whatever feels good here. All right, back to constructive rest. So we've got one more pose to do, and then Shavasana, final relaxation pose. So come back to your mat, settle into your constructive rest with your support under your head, shifting your hips, your shoulders, your feet, your knees. And we're going to come into a twist. So start to shift your hips over to one side, and then your knees are going to go in the opposite direction. Your arms can be out to the side, a hand on a knee, hand on a belly, hands wherever is comfortable for you. Your next inhale, bring your knees back up. Shift your hips so you're back to neutral, taking a pause between the two sides. Then you'll shift your hips to the other side an inch or two, and you'll move your knees over to the opposite direction of where your hips just shifted. Adjusting anything you might need to here, making sure you're not forcing a shoulder or anything else down on the mat. You can always come out of the twist if it's too much. You can modify it. Your next inhale, lift your knees and legs back up. Shift yourself so you're back to neutral. And time for Shavasana, or final relaxation pose. If you have lots of props and know what to do, feel free to set yourself up. I recommend a 5, 10, 15 minute Shavasana. We won't hold it for that long in this video. You could set yourself up, pause, set the timer on your phone for that 5, 10, 15 minutes. We'll do a couple of minutes here. If you have support for under your knees, so if you want to extend your legs out long and you have support, that can be nice. It can be difficult for most of us to just lie on a hard floor. Maybe you have a nice cushy carpet that you're on. I typically, if I have a shorter Shavasana, I'll come into constructive rest with my feet wide and have my knees support each other, and that can feel nice for those of us who have low back issues, or maybe your back's just bothering you today. So find something that's comfortable, that you can relax, that you're not feeling pain or discomfort, because that'll distract your mind, and we want to try to be as quiet in our mind as we can be. And that's harder to do when we're still, but we're going to work on it. Just think about that idea, breathing in, calm, breathing out, ease. That could be your little mantra of breathing. Or you could just remind yourself when you inhale, inhale, and exhale, exhale. Notice if you're fidgety. I feel a little fidgety. It's okay. See if you can bring yourself to stillness. Notice if you're scratching an itch, if you're adjusting, if you're doing so mindfully, or if it's just a fidget. Next inhale, your body receives. Make it fuller, deeper, and longer. As you exhale, sigh it out. And to make that small movements in your body, your fingers, your toes, your hands, your feet, wrists, and ankles. You can move your head side to side. You can stretch. You can hug your knees in. Yawn is good. Whatever feels good for you. And eventually, you'll have your feet on your mat and you'll roll over to one side. And before you come up, pause here. Transitioning from our Shavasana to a seat, we still need to be mindful. You'll press your hands into your mat to help lift you up, bringing your head up last. Then find that comfortable seat where you can sit well, tall, and long. You're sitting on the edge of your blanket. You don't have to sit cross-legged. You could have your legs out long, your knees bent, your feet on your mat, Baddha Konasana, soles of the feet together. So just find a place where you can be as comfortable as possible. I know sitting is not necessarily comfortable for a lot of us, so you just do what's best for you. If you choose to stay lying down, that's totally fine and appropriate as well. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Bring your hands together at heart center in Anjali Mudra. Keep peace in your mind, keep strength in your body, and keep love in your heart. Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I hope you enjoyed the practice. I always enjoy putting these together. If you want to comment below, you're welcome to. If you need to email me, it's therealgofitgirl@gmail.com. I'm on social media, Twitter and Facebook as GoFitGirl, and Instagram as The Real GoFitGirl. Thank you for your support, and as always, please keep supporting your yoga teachers if you can. Have a great day, and I hope to practice with you again soon. Thanks.